The store buzzed with noise, cashiers chiming, carts rattling, until a roar cut through. "Get out!" Silence fell. Lisa clutched her children, her handful of coins trembling. The owner loomed, eyes icy. "This isn't a charity." Her son's hollow cheeks flushed with shame. They turned to leave, defeated, until boots clacked behind them. A stranger stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. "Ring up their groceries." The crowd froze, because this man wasn't just anyone. Lisa hesitated at the entrance, her heart pounding. The grocery store smelled of fresh bread and warm spices, but to her it felt unwelcoming. She gripped her daughter's tiny hand tightly while her son walked close, his oversized jacket hanging loosely on his frail frame. They had learned to move quietly, to avoid drawing attention. Her eyes darted across the shelves, calculating, hoping. They had enough for a loaf of bread, maybe some milk. She reached for the bread with careful hands, clutching the carton of milk as well. "Mom!" Her son's voice was barely a whisper. She turned. He held up a small pack of cookies, eyes filled with silent hope. Lisa's chest tightened. "Not today." She forced a smile, masking the ache in her heart. "Maybe next time, sweetheart." The boy hesitated, then nodded without argument. He placed the cookies back, his small fingers lingering on the package for just a second longer. Lisa exhaled, steadying herself. She adjusted her grip on the groceries and stepped toward the register. That's when she felt it. A presence. Eyes watching. From behind the counter, the store owner stood like a shadow. A man in his 50s, thick arms crossed over his chest, his gaze sharp and piercing. Lisa lowered her eyes, avoiding his stare. She had seen men like him before. They never looked at people like her with kindness. The weight of his judgment made every step heavier. She forced herself forward. Her hands shook as she counted the handful of coins in her palm. Just enough, or so she thought. A voice, rough and cold, shattered the fragile silence. "Hey!" Lisa flinched. Her daughter tensed, gripping her arm. The store fell silent. The store owner wasn't behind the counter anymore. He was walking toward them, fast, heavy steps, and his eyes full of hostility. Lisa's fingers tightened around the coins. Her stomach twisted. The store owner marched forward, his heavy boots thudding against the tiles. The air in the store shifted, tense. Lisa's daughter shrank behind her, clutching her coat. Her son stood frozen, his small hands clenched into fists. The store owner's voice boomed. "You people always do this, wasting my time." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She forced her voice to stay calm. "I have money," she whispered, lifting her shaking hand. "Coins, barely enough." The store owner's lip curled. "That?" He scoffed, glancing at the bread and milk. "That won't even cover this." Lisa's face burned. She gripped the items tighter, her knuckles white. Her son stepped forward, his voice small but steady. "Please, sir, my sister hasn't eaten since yesterday." The store owner's eyes darkened, cold, unforgiving. Lisa held her breath. A flicker of humanity? A moment of hesitation? None. His voice cut like a blade. "Not my problem, kid." Lisa's chest tightened. Her son's shoulders sank. The owner's gaze swept over them, dismissive. "Now get out before I call the cops." Lisa stiffened. Her daughter whimpered. Eyes burned into them, yet no one spoke. No one stood up. Lisa gritted her teeth. She wanted to fight, to demand fairness, but she knew how this ended. People like him always won. She turned, head bowed. Her son clung to her hand, his grip trembling. They took the first step toward the exit. Then, a voice, low, steady, but with a weight that silenced everything. "That's enough." Lisa's breath hitched. The store owner froze. The entire store turned toward the voice. A man stepped forward from the aisle, dressed in a dark jacket, jeans, nothing flashy, but his presence was undeniable. Bollywood icon. The store owner's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" Bollywood icon's expression stayed unreadable. His voice calm, firm. "Does owning a store give you the right to treat people like this?" The store fell into absolute silence. Lisa's pulse raced. She didn't know why, but in that moment, she felt hope. The store was dead silent. Every eye was on him, Bollywood icon stood between Lisa and the store owner, unmoving. His posture was relaxed, but his presence was commanding. Lisa's heart pounded. The store owner's eyes narrowed, irritated. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Bollywood icon didn't flinch. His voice wasn't loud but carried undeniable weight. "Does owning a store give you the right to treat people this way?" The store owner huffed, shaking his head. "Look, buddy, if you're here to shop, fine. If not, don't tell me how to run my business." Bollywood icon tilted his head slightly, studying the man. "You think this is running a business?" The store owner's nostrils flared. "You have no idea what it's like to deal with people like them." He jabbed a finger toward Lisa. "They come in, they take, they never—" Bollywood icon took a slow step forward. His eyes locked onto the man's. His tone dropped, quiet but edged with steel. "People like them?" The store owner hesitated. For the first time, his confidence wavered. The store's customers, once silent, were now fully engaged. Whispers spread. Lisa clutched her children, her hands trembling. She had spent years being ignored, looked down on, treated as invisible. But now someone stood in front of her, refusing to back down. The store owner laughed bitterly. "You really want to fight about this? Fine." He gestured toward Lisa. "Are you going to pay for them? Play the hero?" Bollywood icon didn't answer right away. He simply reached into his pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and placed it on the counter. Gasps. The store owner's smug expression vanished. Lisa's eyes widened. Bollywood icon's voice was steady, unshaken. "This should cover their groceries." For the first time, the store owner was speechless. Customers murmured, some nodding in approval. Then, a middle-aged woman stepped forward, eyes fierce. She placed a $20 bill beside Bollywood icon's. "No child should go hungry," she said. A young man followed, adding a few crumpled bills. "This isn't right," he muttered. An elderly man placed his hand on Lisa's shoulder. "We're with you," he said softly. Lisa's breath hitched. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone. The store owner stared at the $100 bill on the counter. His fingers twitched. His jaw clenched. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, so now we're just handing out money?" He looked around, eyes filled with scorn. "Is that what this is? A charity drive?" Bollywood icon's expression didn't change. "This is called kindness," he said simply. The store owner snorted. "You think throwing money around makes you some kind of hero?" Bollywood icon didn't flinch, didn't blink. He gestured toward Lisa. "This woman wasn't asking for charity. She was trying to buy food for her children, and you humiliated her." Lisa's throat tightened. She had spent years swallowing shame, learning to disappear. But Bollywood icon was dragging the truth into the light. The store owner shook his head. "Not my fault she doesn't have enough," the crowd murmured. A woman in a floral dress stepped forward. She reached into her purse, pulled out a $20 bill, and placed it on the counter. "No child should go hungry," she said firmly. Another man, younger, dug into his pockets. He pulled out a few crumpled bills and tossed them beside the others. "Yeah," he muttered, eyes locked on the store owner. "This isn't right." One by one, more hands reached forward. More money piled onto the counter. Lisa's vision blurred with unshed tears. The store owner's face twisted in frustration. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You people think you're better than me? You think you can just come in here and make me look bad?" Bollywood icon's voice remained level, but his words cut deep. "You're doing that all on your own." The store owner's face turned red. He gritted his teeth. "You don't get to tell me how to run my store." Bollywood icon took a slow step forward. He wasn't aggressive, wasn't threatening, but there was something in his eyes, something unshakable. "This isn't about your store," Bollywood icon said quietly. "It's about what kind of person you choose to be." The store owner opened his mouth, closed it. The room felt heavy, the weight of his own actions pressed down on him. Lisa watched, waiting. The crowd waited too. The store owner's fists curled at his sides. He took one last look at the pile of money, a symbol of the kindness he had denied. Then, with a frustrated growl, he turned away. "Fine," he barked. "Take your stupid groceries and get out." Lisa sucked in a sharp breath. Bollywood icon, without breaking eye contact, placed another $100 bill on the counter. These people won't need to come back, he said. Lisa's hands trembled. Bollywood icon turned to her, his voice softer now. Get what your family needs. Don't worry about the cost. Lisa stared at him, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Bollywood icon gave a small nod. You don't have to say anything. Lisa clutched her son's hand. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she thought she had lost. Hope. The store owner's eyes darted between the pile of money and the faces staring him down. His fingers twitched against the counter, his breathing uneven. The weight of the moment pressed against his chest, but he refused to break. You think this changes anything? His voice was sharp, but there was an edge of desperation beneath it. You think you can waltz in here, throw money around, and make me the bad guy? Bollywood icon didn't move, didn't flinch. You made that choice yourself, he said, voice steady. The store owner slammed his palm on the counter. The sound cracked through the tense silence. This is my store, he barked. My rules. If she can't pay, she doesn't get to take whatever she wants. That's how the world works. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Lisa tensed, instinct telling her to shrink away. But this time she didn't move. Bollywood icon stood firm beside her, and so did the others. The world works when people look out for each other, the woman in the floral dress countered. Not when they step on the ones who have nothing. The store owner laughed, but there was no humor in it, just bitterness. You don't get it, do you? His voice turned acidic. None of you understand how hard it is to keep a business running. Rent goes up, suppliers raise prices, and people like her, he jabbed a finger toward Lisa, expect me to just hand out food for free? Where does it end, huh? Maybe I should give away the whole store while I'm at it. No one asked for a handout, Bollywood icon said, his tone cool, unwavering. She tried to pay. You turned her away. The store owner's face darkened. I did what any business owner would do. You think you're some kind of savior? Some knight in shining armor? He sneered. You're just another fool who doesn't understand reality. Bollywood icon's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, a new voice cut through the room. Number, he understands better than you. A man in a delivery uniform stepped forward. You overcharge us every week, he said. Jack up prices whenever you feel like it. But when someone's struggling, you treat them like garbage. Another customer, an elderly woman, nodded. We've seen how you run things. Maybe it's time for a change. The murmurs grew louder. People who had been silent before were speaking up now. Their voices carried weight. The store owner's face flushed. Get out, he snapped. All of you. I don't need your pity money, and I don't need your lectures. Bollywood icon reached into his pocket, pulled out another $100 bill, and set it on the counter. Then you won't be seeing us again, he said. Lisa's breath caught. This wasn't just a victory, it was a shift. As the store owner glared at the pile of cash, the realization dawned on him. He hadn't just lost a sale, he had lost his community. Lisa turned to Bollywood icon, voice trembling. Thank you. Bollywood icon simply nodded. Let's go. Lisa stood still, unable to move. Her hands trembled as she clutched her groceries, her breath uneven. This kind of kindness, it felt unreal. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Bollywood icon turned to her, his voice calm but certain. Everyone deserves kindness. Lisa's eyes burned with unshed tears. She had been made to feel invisible for so long. But now, standing here, surrounded by strangers willing to help, it was overwhelming. Her son clutched his cookies, his fingers pressing into the plastic wrap. His eyes, once filled with disappointment, now sparkled. His sister held onto her mother's sleeve, still unsure if this was real. One by one, the customers stepped forward. A woman in her 30s placed a $10 bill on the counter. A young man in a hoodie dug into his pockets and added a few crumpled bills. The same middle-aged woman who had spoken earlier squeezed Lisa's shoulder gently. You're not alone, she said, voice full of emotion. Lisa nodded quickly, unable to find words. She had spent so many years feeling isolated, and now in a place she had once feared, people were standing beside her. But the store owner? He remained silent. His eyes flicked between the pile of money, the customers, and Bollywood icon. The arrogance, the smugness, gone. What remained was something else. Something almost like regret. But he didn't apologize, didn't speak. Instead, he turned sharply, muttering under his breath. The tension in the store didn't fade. It hung thick in the air. Lisa exhaled sharply, gripping her children's hands. This moment, this simple act of kindness, had changed everything. Not just for her, for everyone watching. Bollywood icon turned to the crowd, his voice steady but filled with purpose. "We all have a choice," he said. His words cut through the silence like a knife. "Every day we decide what kind of world we want to live in." His eyes swept over the crowd. "Do we turn away when someone is struggling?" The weight of his words settled deep. A woman in the back slowly nodded, wiping her eyes. An older man rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Even the young cashier, who had watched everything in silence, suddenly looked down at the counter, ashamed. Lisa squeezed Bollywood icon's arm lightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for this, but for standing up for us." Bollywood icon smiled. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "This isn't charity. This is just how people should treat each other." Lisa's chest tightened. For the first time in a long time, she believed that. Lisa held on to her groceries, her hands still trembling. The reality of what had just happened hadn't fully sunk in. Her children clung to her, their small fingers wrapped around her coat. They weren't scared anymore. They were in awe. Bollywood icon turned to her, his voice warm. "Are you all set?" Lisa nodded slowly, still processing. Her son clutched his cookies, staring at Bollywood icon as if he were some kind of superhero. Her daughter held on to her mother's sleeve, her eyes wide. Lisa glanced at the entrance, hesitating. The weight of everything, the kindness, the humiliation, the relief was almost too much. "We usually take the bus," she murmured, "but it's a long walk to the stop." Bollywood icon nodded thoughtfully. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone and made a call. Lisa frowned, watching. Moments later, he slipped his phone back into his jacket. "You won't have to walk today," he said simply. "It's taken care of." Lisa stared. Her chest tightened, emotion swelling in her throat. "You've already done so much," she whispered. Bollywood icon met her gaze, calm as ever. "Sometimes we all need a little help." Lisa bit her lip, nodding quickly. This was too much, more than she could ever repay. But before she could say anything else, Bollywood icon added, "One day, when you're in a position to help someone else, I hope you'll do the same." Lisa swallowed hard, her throat burning. She didn't trust herself to speak, but she understood. She felt the weight of his words, and she wouldn't forget them. Just then, a sleek, clean car pulled up outside. Lisa blinked, surprised. She had expected a cheap taxi. Not this. The driver stepped out, opening the back door. Lisa turned to Bollywood icon, speechless. He simply gave a small nod. "Go on," he said. Lisa's son was the first to move. He climbed into the car, still clutching his cookies like a treasure. Her daughter followed, sliding in beside him. Lisa paused for one last moment. She turned to Bollywood icon, her voice breaking. "Thank you." Bollywood icon smiled softly. "Take care of yourself," he said. Lisa hesitated, her eyes brimming with emotion. "You've given us more than just groceries today," she murmured. Bollywood icon tilted his head slightly. "You've given us hope." Bollywood icon didn't reply right away. Instead, he simply watched as the car pulled away. Lisa's son waved from the back window, his grin wide. Bollywood icon raised a hand in farewell. As the car disappeared down the street, he exhaled, his lips curving into a small, knowing smile. Because he knew. This moment would stay with them forever. And that was enough. The store remained eerily silent. Even after Lisa and her children were gone, the weight of what had just happened lingered. Customers exchanged glances, murmuring. Some still stared at the pile of money on the counter. The store owner, once so confident, stood rigid behind the register. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened. But he didn't say a word, because for the first time, he wasn't in control. Then from the crowd, an elderly man stepped forward. His voice was calm, but there was something knowing in his tone. "Do you know who that was?" The store owner's eyes flicked to him, irritated. "No," he muttered. "Some guy who thinks he's special?" The elderly man chuckled softly. "Oh, he's special, all right." He let the words hang, allowing the curiosity to build. "That was Bollywood icon." The store fell into stunned silence. Someone gasped audibly. A woman near the frozen food section covered her mouth. A teenager whipped out his phone, his fingers moving quickly. "No way," he muttered. "That was him?" More whispers spread like wildfire. "The Bollywood icon? The actor? The one who gives away millions to charity?" The store owner froze, his face drained of color. His eyes flicked to the door, as if somehow Bollywood icon might still be standing there. But he wasn't. He was gone. The customers moved closer together, murmuring excitedly. Some pulled out their phones, searching for his name. One man in a business suit let out a low whistle. I knew he looked familiar. A young woman, still holding a carton of eggs, shook her head in disbelief. He could have just walked away. He didn't have to do anything. The elderly man smiled knowingly. That's exactly why he did. The words settled over the crowd. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of Bollywood icon's actions sank in. Not because he was famous, not because of his wealth, but because he had done what no one else had the courage to do. He had stood up when it mattered, and now the store owner was left to face himself. His hands, still planted on the counter, tightened into fists. His face twisted, but not in anger. Something else. Something almost like regret. For the first time in years, he wasn't the most powerful man in the room, and he didn't like it. The elderly man gave him one last look. His voice was soft, but firm. "You had a chance to do the right thing today." The store owner's throat bobbed as he swallowed, but he still said nothing, because deep down, he knew the old man was right. Outside, the city moved on. Cars honked. People hurried down sidewalks. But for Lisa and her children, the world felt different. In the back seat of the car Bollywood icon had arranged, her son hugged his cookies close, his voice small but full of wonder. "Mom, do you think that man was a superhero?" Lisa let out a soft chuckle, brushing a hand through his hair. "Maybe not a superhero," she said, voice thick with emotion, "but he's definitely someone special." Her daughter, still clutching her stuffed animal, nodded quietly. "He made me feel like we matter." Lisa's chest tightened. She glanced out the window, watching the streets blur past. Her life hadn't changed overnight. She still had struggles ahead. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. She reached for her son's hand, squeezing gently. "We do matter," she whispered, "and one day we'll pay this kindness forward." The car drove on, fading into the distance. Back at the store, the customers were still talking. Some had already called their friends and family, eager to share the story. A woman near the checkout wiped her eyes. "I never thought I'd see something like that happen here." A man beside her nodded. "That's the kind of world I want to live in." The elderly man, the one who had recognized Bollywood icon, watched the store owner carefully. The man behind the counter hadn't moved. His hand still hovered near the pile of money. His face, once hard with arrogance, was unreadable. Finally he exhaled, slowly, deeply. He looked around the store, taking in the faces watching him, and for the first time, he didn't see customers. He saw people. People who had stood together. People who had fought for something right. He wasn't sure if he liked the feeling twisting in his chest. But one thing was clear. Today had changed something in him. The elderly man gave him a knowing look. "It's never too late to change," he said. The store owner didn't answer, didn't argue. He just stood there staring at the money, at the door, at nothing. And in that silence, a seed was planted. Meanwhile, Bollywood icon walked down the sidewalk, blending into the city. He didn't need applause, didn't need recognition. He had done what needed to be done, and that was enough. As he reached the street corner, his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant, a reminder about a charity event that evening. He glanced back toward the store. The customers still talked. The store owner still stood there thinking. Bollywood icon let a small smile tug at his lips. Because this? This had meant more than any event ever could. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the streets in orange and pink, he walked on, one act of kindness at a time.